Dr. Nicole Seda Boone. I have been in the area practicing as a veterinarian for almost 12 years now. Currently work at Eagle Rock Veterinary Clinic that's been open since November of 2022. I see dogs, cats, and exotic pets. So your little critters, lizards, birds, rabbits, ferrets, things like that. I can provide the general veterinary care.
Awesome. That's cool. I know you left one practice and everyone was like so sad. And when you told me you were starting up another one, I was like, everyone's be so thrilled. So are you busy again? I'm sure you are already.
Yes, we still have, we are still accepting new clients, but yeah, we're getting busy.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I wanted to chat with you. I think one of the biggest things I hear from people are asking questions about like the Parvo series and puppies. Can you kind of go over the Parvo series, maybe some Parvo risks and things people just really need to know about Parvo in general? Because that's, I think people are nervous about getting Parvo, which I totally get.
Definitely, I get that too. So Parvo virus is it's a hardy virus. It survives very well outside in the environment, which is why we deal with this every year in this area. It is a virus that essentially kind of rips out the intestinal lining. So symptoms include lethargy, not wanting to eat, vomiting, diarrhea, oftentimes with blood. They just really don't feel well. And worst case scenario can result in death. With treatment, the treatment varies. We have some outpatient protocols if they're not too sick. Sometimes it's enough, but other times we can hospitalize and can spend a lot of money. So the vaccine is a really good vaccine, and I definitely recommend it as a preventative for Parvo. Vaccine is cheap compared to the disease itself, and then your animal doesn't have to go through all of those clinical symptoms. For vaccinating as puppies, there's some general rules that we kind of work between, but ideally vaccinating them at 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and 16 weeks is what most of us will recommend. The earliest a lot of us will recommend vaccination is starting at 6 weeks, and this is due to the mother's immunity playing a role. So if we vaccinate prior to 6 weeks, we will sometimes see that it's not necessarily going to harm your puppy, but it's not really going to offer them protection either. So many times we'll have a puppy that will get like an additional vaccine. It's because we want to make sure that they are fully protected against not just Parvo, because the distemper Parvo series typically protects against other diseases as well. But Parvo is definitely one of the more concerning ones that we see frequently in this area. It is very important that that last vaccine in this puppy series is at the 16-week mark or later. So if it is earlier, for the vaccine companies and the studies, they will consider them not fully vaccinated. A lot of the vaccine companies do guarantee that they will not get Parvo if it was done appropriately via their recommendations. So if you do go to the vet and you get the entire series and for some reason your dog gets Parvo a year later or something like that, which is very, very unusual, many times they will cover some of the treatment for that. They stand behind their vaccines.
Okay. Did it take after they get that last set at 16 weeks? Are they like fully covered, or are they going to need to have a couple of weeks in between before they're considered fully covered?
So that depends on, every vaccine is a little bit different. General rule of thumb is 2 to 4 weeks after the last booster are they 100%. After the second booster, there's a lot of studies that suggest that there already is a lot more protection. So, for example, some dogs with Parvo, if they've already had some boosters before and they haven't, finished the series, many times they don't get as sick as a dog that hasn't had the vaccine at all.
Okay.
So it does, each vaccine booster does help in the protection against Parvo.
Okay. Where are the biggest places where dogs are getting Parvo? the parks and all that kind of stuff, or where do you see it most coming
So,
from?
so we say that the parks, like dog parks, are a high risk area, and they are, but many times I think we're not even finding the source of parvo, because parvo is such a hardy virus. It's really easy for us to walk through, pick it up on our shoes, and bring it home. You could have a stray cat walk through a yard that has an animal sick with parvo, and while the cat doesn't themselves get sick or anything, is on their paw, they hop into another backyard. Now that backyard has some parvo in there. So it's a virus that survives very well outside.
Okay. So the one thing I run into is I'm telling people we got to socialize, and I'm telling people to pick up puppies and carry them around. And that is till, that huge window for socialization ends at like 16 weeks, right? When that Parvo series finishes. Any additional advice as far as that goes, other than just taking them out and carrying them as being the best way to keep them safe?
So that one's kind of a tough one, because there is a little bit of risk. You play a balance, because yes, we do want to socialize our animals, because that's also very important. We don't want to have an unsocialized animal that's completely protected against vaccines, but no one can touch or interact with, and that's not what we are hoping for either. I typically recommend trying to avoid the really big community areas. So the pet stores, I highly recommend you not bringing your puppy to a pet store until they are completely vaccinated. The dog parks, don't bring your puppy to the dog park until they are completely vaccinated. However, if you have friends, that their animals are vaccinated, that in their yard there's no parvo, feel free to introduce them and do that. Going on walks is kind of a tough one, because you're going out into an environment you have absolutely no idea, and there is a risk. After the second booster, I feel more comfortable starting to take like my own pets out on walks. But I know that there's no guarantee yet until they have the complete set. So there is a small risk each time that we go out and do that, but socialization is also very important. And not something that we can ignore either.
Yeah. Any advice for those in apartment complexes? Is it easy? I mean, that's probably a huge issue that I hear about, is how do we stay safe when we live in an apartment complex where dogs are everywhere?
So that's a tough one. A lot of people with small dogs will resort to like the potty pad training. I personally have not done that, and that does not appeal to me. But some people really like that, and it does protect their animal from having to go outside, in the other group. I have seen not so much parvo, but things like kennel cough. Those will go through apartment complexes. So we'll have a whole bunch that we'll see, and people will be like, well, my neighbor's dog is coughing, and now my dog's coughing, and it goes through. So that's a common one that we'll see in apartment complexes. And parvo, if it were to get in there, would probably be another one where that would go through. So that there's a risk there, but that's kind of a hard one to completely eliminate.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you think people really just need to know about the Parvo virus or the Parvo series? And then we'll kind of move on to another question. But you covered it pretty well, but
yeah, I can't think of anything off of the top of my head right now.
Okay. So the other big thing that I hear about all the time is people call and I said, we took my dog to the vet. They had a really hard time. How do I make sure my next vet visit is better? So before we get to like having to get to the point where we have to get better, what are ways that you feel owners could do to help prepare their puppies for a lifetime of vet care where it's not going to be as stressful? Because I think it's going to be stressful anytime, but where it's not as stressful on the dog, where they're more comfortable in that environment. Is there anything that you think of? I mean, you see these dogs every day. What can we do better as owners?
I think starting as puppies is crucial. That is the main time to get in there and do that. Touch their feet touch their ears, pet them all over and everything like that, which everyone typically does, but touching their ears and touching their feet are big ones, because we will have some dogs that will let us do anything, and the second we touch their feet, they lose it. Nail trims, start getting them used to getting nail trims when they're puppies, so that is not a battle. There is medication and stuff that we can use to help with visits in the future, but starting as a puppy, those are probably the biggest things. I think most vet clinics were pretty good about giving them treats to, as positive reinforcement when they come in. And if you've got a dog that's picky and likes a certain treat, bring that treat in. We appreciate that. And happy to work with people, and we can move slowly with people or with dogs, I guess, move slowly with them, to get them used to us. I would say the majority of the dogs actually come into the vet clinic and don't have a problem. But those that are really stressed out and those that do have a problem, it really helps to be working with them immediately from puppies. It's a lot harder once they're an adult.
Yeah, definitely. Do you find that it's easier for you guys to handle the dog versus, having us there helping? I know I've had a vet that says, here, just drop the leash, and they kind of just do their thing over there, and I sit there and ignore the dog. Do you find that makes things easier where they're not feeding off of our anxiety as well?
Yes, I think the majority of the time that's the case. There is the occasional dog where we will notice and we'll make a note, does better with owner, but that's in the minority. I think the majority of them are either fine with all of us, or they actually do better being away from the owner's hands. We know how to properly restrain them as well to make sure that everything is safe for not only the pet, but for all of us handling the pet. And I do think that puppies sometimes feed off of their owner's potential anxiety. So I do think that, trust in the vet staff. I mean, we're typically there to do everything in front of you, things like that, but trust in us when we say, hey, can we hold, or we're going to do this a little bit differently. It'll help, I believe, helps the pet as well in many cases. And again, that's not a one rule, one blanket statement for everybody. Because there are some dogs that do better with their owners than without, but I would say the majority do just fine without their owners, and